Welcome back kapatid! In this video, I will be discussing the stages of execution or commission of a crime. Before I discuss the stages of execution, I will discuss this following concept first: internal acts, external acts, and phases of felony. Internal acts. As a rule, intent, ideas, and plans generally are not punishable, even if had they been carried out, they would constitute a crime. For example, Jose plans to kill Juan. This is not yet, as a rule, punishable. External acts. There are two kinds of external act. First, preparatory acts, and second, acts of execution. Preparatory acts. Acts which do not have a direct connection with the crime which the offender intends to commit. As a rule, they are ordinarily not punished, except when considered by law as independent crimes. For example, the crime of possession of pickaxe punished under Article 304 of the Revised Penal Code. Preparatory acts do not yet constitute even the first stage of the acts of execution. For example, Jose went to the kitchen to get a knife. Here, we don't know yet what Jose will do to the knife. Acts of execution. Usually, they are overt acts with a logical relation to a particular concrete offense. As a rule, this is already punishable. Example, Jose stabbed Juan using the knife. Phases of felony. 1. Subjective phase and 2. Objective phase. Subjective phase. The subjective phase in the commission of a felony is that portion of its execution starting from the point where the offender begins by overt acts to pursue the crime until he is prevented against his will by some outside cause from performing all of the acts which would produce the offense. Objective phase, on the other hand, is the results of the acts of execution, that is, the accomplishment of the crime. Now I will discuss the stages of execution or commission of felonies. There are 3 stages of execution. 1. Consummated stage. 2. Frustrated stage. 3. Attempted stage. Consummated stage. All the elements necessary for its execution and accomplishment are present. In this case, the subjective and objective phases are present. Frustrated stage. The offender has performed all the acts of execution to produce the felony as a consequence, but the crime does not result due to some cause independent of the will of the offender. The following are the elements of frustrated stage. 1. The offender performs all the acts of execution. 2. All the acts performed would produce the felony as a consequence. 3. But the felony is not produced. 4. By reason of causes independent of the will of the perpetrator. Crimes that does not have frustrated stage. 1. Rape. Since the gravamen of the offense is carnal knowledge, hence, no matter how slight the penetration is, the felony is consummated. 2. Indirect bribery. If the public officer does not accept the gift, he does not commit the crime, but if he does, it is consummated. 3. Corruption of public officers. Because the offense requires the concurrence of the will of both parties, such as that when the offer is accepted, the offense is consummated, but when the offer is rejected, the offense is merely attempted. 4. Adultery. The essence of the crime is sexual congress. 5. Physical injury. We cannot determine whether the injury will be slight, less serious, or serious unless or until consummated. 6. Theft. Free disposition of the items stolen is not in any way determinative of whether the crime of theft has been produced. 7. Arson. The crime of arson is therefore consummated even if only a portion of the wall or any part of the house is burned. The consummation of the crime of arson does not depend upon the extent of the damage caused. Attempted stage. The offender begins the commission of the felony by direct overt acts, but does not perform all the acts of execution which should produce the felony as a consequence, by reason of some cause or accident other than his own spontaneous desistance. Essential elements of an attempted felony. 1. The offender commences the commission of the felony by direct overt acts. 2. He does not perform all the acts of execution which should produce the felony. 3. The offender's act be not stopped by his own spontaneous desistance. 4. The non-performance of all acts of execution was due to cause or accident other than his own spontaneous desistance. The first requisite of an attempted felony consists of two elements, namely, that there be an external act. Such external acts have direct connection with the crime intended to be committed. Overt acts. Overt acts are some physical activities or deed indicating the intention to commit a particular crime, more than mere planning or preparation, which, if carried to its complete termination, following its natural course, without being frustrated by external obstacles, nor by voluntary desistance of the perpetrator, will logically and necessarily ripen into concrete offense. Desistance. Desistance is an absolutory cause which negates criminal liability because the law encourages a person to desist from committing a crime. But it does not negate all criminal liability. If the desistance was made when acts done by him already resulted in a felony, the offender will still be criminally liable for the felony brought about by his act. Note that desistance is true only in the attempted stage of the felony. Rule as to wound. The doctrinal rule is that where the wound inflicted on the victim is not sufficient to cause his death, the accused, not having performed all the acts of execution that would brought it about, the crime is only attempted murder or a homicide as the case may be. Factors in determining the stage of execution of a felony. 1. The manner of committing the crime. 2. The elements of the crime. And 3. The nature of the crime itself. These three factors are helpful in trying to pinpoint whether the crime is still in its attempted, frustrated, or consummated stage. For our next video, I will be discussing conspiracy and proposal. Subscribe ka sa channel na to para sabay-sabay natin abutin ang ating mga pangarap. Just comment your questions if there's any and we will try to answer them. Thank you!